In the heart of Seattle's bustling fashion district, Clara, a talented young tailor, is quietly trying to stitch her dreams together. Every day, she pours her soul into the seams of every garment she touches, working late hours, dodging debts, and holding on to one fragile hope: to launch a clothing line that reflects her vision and spirit. But not everyone wants to see her succeed. Enter Oliver, a gentle, soft-spoken man who walks into her shop one rainy morning with a ripped jacket and an easy smile. To Clara, he's just another customer with a kind heart. To everyone else, well, they don't know he's hiding something big. As Clara's designs begin to catch the city's attention, so does the jealousy of a coworker bent on seeing her fall. Sabotage, stolen sketches, and rumors threaten to unravel everything she's built. And all the while, Oliver watches silently from the shadows, helping in ways Clara could never imagine, all without revealing who he really is. But secrets, no matter how well intended, have a cost. Can Clara survive the betrayal of someone close to her? Can trust be rebuilt after truths are exposed? And will love endure when the lines between honesty and protection blur? If you're drawn to stories about quiet heroes, fierce dreams, and love that chooses sacrifice over spotlight, the story will stay with you long after the final stitch. Don't miss this unforgettable journey. Tap that subscribe button now for more emotional stories like this every week. Rain drizzled softly against the wide storefront window of Atelier Charm, tracing silvery lines across the glass. Inside, Clara Thomas bent over a vintage sewing machine, her fingers moving with quiet confidence as she replaced a broken zipper on a charcoal wool coat. Her auburn curls were pulled back into a messy bun, a pencil tucked behind one ear. Every stitch she made was precise, purposeful, each one a prayer that maybe, just maybe, this week's tips would cover rent. The bell above the door chimed. Clara glanced up, expecting another repair job or maybe someone needing last-minute alterations for a wedding. Instead, a man with the dark curls and a rain-speckled jacket stepped in. He didn't match the usual hurried downtown crowd. He moved slowly, almost sheepishly, as if he didn't quite belong in the boutique's curated chaos of fabric swatches, mannequins, and soft jazz playing from an old stereo. "Hi there," Clara said, brushing loose threads from her apron. "Looking for something in particular?" The man held up a blazer, the seam near the shoulder clearly torn. "Just hoping someone can work a miracle," Clara smiled. "We do small miracles here. Big ones take a deposit." He chuckled, and she caught the warmth in his eyes, quiet, kind, like he noticed details others missed. "Name's Oliver." "Clara, let me take a look." As she examined the jacket, Oliver studied the space. It was charming in a mismatched, lived-in way. Pinned sketches lined the corkboard by her workstation. Her initials CT were signed beneath every one. "These are yours?" he asked. Clara nodded, a hint of pride in her eyes. "Yeah, one day I'm hoping to turn a few of them into an actual line. Right now, I mostly fix busted hems and stuck zippers." "Well, you've got an eye," he said. "The lines, the detail, it's got elegance." Clara glanced up, surprised by his sincerity. Most people complimented her stitching only after it saved their favorite coat. "Thanks, that means more than you know." In the corner of the room, Elise, another tailor, watched the exchange from behind a rack of skirts she was pretending to steam. Her expression soured as Clara and Oliver shared another laugh. When Clara turned back to her machine, Elise rolled her eyes and headed toward the back room, her phone already in hand. "So," Clara said, sliding the jacket beneath the presser foot, "what do you do, Oliver?" "Consulting," he replied quickly. "A little bit of this, a little bit of that. I bounce between projects." He avoided her eyes. "Let's just say, I get to meet a lot of interesting people. Well, if you ever get bored of suits and spreadsheets, you're welcome to fold fabric here for minimum wage." He laughed again, richer this time, and Clara felt something she hadn't in months: hope. It flickered in her chest like a forgotten pilot light. 15 minutes later, The jacket was fixed, the seam barely visible. Oliver tested it, nodding with approval. "How much do I owe you?" Clara hesitated. She wanted to say, "on the house," but she needed every cent. "20," she said gently. He handed her 30. "Keep the change." "Oliver, that's to consider it an investment," he said, pausing at the door. "I have a feeling about you." Before she could respond, he was gone, swallowed by the rain. Clara stood there for a long second, staring at the empty doorway. She didn't know that Oliver Reed was the CEO of Vantage Couture, one of the biggest names in sustainable fashion. She didn't know that he'd walked into her shop not by chance, but because he'd been watching her designs online for weeks. And she definitely didn't know that this small, rainy afternoon was about to unravel her life in the ways more beautiful and more complicated than she could ever imagine. The following morning, Clara arrived at Atelier Charm with 2 coffees in hand, one for herself and one for Elise, as a peace offering. The shop buzzed with low conversations and the hum of sewing machines, though the air between the 2 women remained tense. Elise accepted the coffee with a polite smile, but her eyes didn't warm. "Thanks," she said, voice clipped. "Smells burnt, but I guess it's the thought that counts." Clara forced a laugh, brushing off the comment. "Rough night?" Elise shrugged. "Just trying to keep up? Not all of us have secret admirers dropping big tips." Clara stiffened. "Oliver's just a customer. A nice one." Elise's smirk returned. "If you say so." As the day wore on, things got stranger. A client, Mrs. Delaney, one of Clara's regulars, called to cancel her dress fitting, citing concerns about workmanship. Clara's brow furrowed. She loved the sketches, she whispered to herself. She pulled out her phone and scrolled through her messages. Nothing from Mrs. Delaney. No complaints. Just a sudden cancellation. By early afternoon, 2 more clients had rescheduled or backed out. Clara paced near the front counter, stress building like steam inside a kettle. "You okay?" asked Hannah, the part-time receptionist. Clara nodded unconvincingly. "Just a weird day." When her shift ended, Clara didn't go home. Instead, she walked to the corner cafe where she and Oliver had bumped into each other a few times since their first meeting. Sure enough, there he was in his usual spot by the window, a notebook open and a half-drunk latte beside him. He looked up and smiled. "Clara, twice in 1 week I must be doing something right." She slumped into the seat across from him. "It's been a day." Oliver closed his notebook and gave her his full attention. What happened? She told him everything: the cancellations, Elise's attitude, the subtle shift in how people were treating her at work. She didn't cry, but the tightness in her voice said she wasn't far from it. Oliver leaned forward. "Sounds like someone's trying to sabotage your reputation." Clara blinked. "You think so?" He nodded. "It's subtle, pulling threads one at a time, but if someone's jealous of your talent, it makes sense. Undermine your credibility before you get too far ahead." Clara stared at her coffee. Elise has always been sharp, competitive, but I didn't think she'd stoop to that. Oliver was quiet for a beat, then asked gently, "What do you need right now?" Clara looked up, eyes searching his face. "I just want to work, to prove I belong here, that I can make something real." His expression softened. "Then let me help." Clara chuckled softly. "You already have. Just listening helps more than you know." But Oliver meant more than coffee chats and kind words. Later that evening, once Clara had gone home, he made a discreet call. "I need someone with reach in Seattle's fashion scene. A quiet favor." On the other end, his assistant didn't ask questions. She knew how Oliver operated. Intentional, thoughtful, strategic. Back at her tiny apartment above a florist shop, Clara lit a candle and opened her sketchbook. She flipped past her older designs, coats, and dresses she once believed would walk runways and stopped on a new page. She began to draw. Sharp shoulders softened by flowing lines, colors that clashed in harmony, a silhouette that told a story, her story. For the first time in weeks, Clara didn't feel like the underdog. She felt like someone with a voice, and maybe, just maybe, someone was finally listening. The next week started slow at Atelier Charm until a knock on the glass door one crisp Wednesday morning changed everything. Clara looked up from her work table just as a woman in a structured blazer and oversized sunglasses stepped in. "Hi, I'm Tara Bellamy," the woman said with a polished smile. "I'm featuring local artisans on my fashion lifestyle blog, Threaded Intentions. I've heard your work is impressive." Clara blinked. "Me?" Tara smiled again. "Yes, you. Mind if I take a few photos?" Elise, who had been eavesdropping near the fabric wall, froze. Clara hesitated, confused but flattered. Sure. I mean, I wasn't expecting this." "Spontaneity is fashion's best friend," Tara said breezily, pulling out her phone and circling a few displays. "This jacket, is it your design?" Clara nodded. Hand-stitched seams, reclaimed wool, and a custom-dyed lining. Tara lifted an eyebrow. "Sustainable and bold. I like that." By the end of the quick, impromptu visit, Clara was flushed and smiling, unsure if she'd imagined the whole thing. Tara gave her a card and left with a wink. "Keep an eye on your inbox." Later that afternoon, Oliver casually dropped by, his timing oddly perfect. "Let me guess," he said, eyeing Clara's expression. "You just got visited by a blog goddess." "You heard?" Clara asked, eyebrows raised. He chuckled. "Seattle's not that big." "What are the odds?" she asked. "Tara Bellamy? That's huge." Oliver leaned on the counter. "Odds have a way of tilting in your favor when you least expect it." She studied him for a moment, suspicion dancing faintly behind her smile. "Did you have anything to do with it?" He lifted his hands, feigning innocence. "What would I know about fashion blogs?" Clara rolled her eyes, grinning. "You're the only guy I know who talks about coat construction while drinking his latte." That night, Clara's phone buzzed with a notification. The post was live. "Tailoring, tomorrow. Why Clara from Atelier Charm is one to watch." The post featured elegant photos, including one of Clara laughing in her sunlit workroom, her hands gently adjusting the hem of a mannequin's dress. The caption read, "Authenticity stitched into every seam. Clara's designs tell stories, and we're listening." Orders poured in by morning. New clients, out-of-town inquiries, even a message from a boutique asking if she was open to collaboration. Elise hovered silently near the steam press, eyes narrowing with every ping of Clara's inbox. "Looks like you're having a moment," Elise finally said, folding a half-finished blouse. Clara smiled cautiously. "Yeah, I guess so." But Elise wasn't guessing. She was calculating. That evening, Clara and Oliver walked through the Pike Place waterfront as golden hour sunlight kissed the skyline. She told him about the post, about the surge in clients, the boutique offer. "I don't get it," she admitted. "One moment, I was barely holding it together. The next, everything's changing." Oliver looked at her with something deeper than admiration. "Maybe the world finally caught up to what you've always been." She turned to him, heart flickering. "Why are you so nice to me?" He hesitated, choosing his words. "Because you deserve more than what you've had, and I see how hard you fight for it." For a moment, Clara forgot about Elise, about the gossip, about the stress. It was just her, the salt air, and a man who made her feel seen. But back at Atelier Charm, Elise opened her laptop and clicked through the blog's site traffic. Her eyes landed on a comment from O. Mason, a profile she'd seen before on a donation receipt for a school fashion fundraiser, and in the back-end metadata of the blog post's sponsor. Her lips curled into a knowing smirk. So Clara had help. And now, Elise knew exactly where to aim next. 2 days before Clara's most important fitting, she stood in the back room of Atelier Charm, humming softly as she laid out the final silk panels for a custom evening gown. The client, a renowned Seattle attorney, was known for her taste and her temper. Everything had to be perfect. Elise hovered nearby, watching quietly from the shadows of the fabric shelves. "You really think she'll like bold red?" she asked casually, thumbing through swatches. Clara didn't look up. "She chose it. Wants to stand out." "Well, you'll definitely stand out if the seams pucker," Elise said with a smirk, then sauntered off. Clara frowned. Elise had been throwing little jabs like that more often lately. Still, Clara shrugged it off. She focused on the silk, double-checked her measurements, and set the fabric aside for morning assembly. But when Clara returned the next day, something felt off. She unfolded the silk and froze. The sheen was wrong. The weave too coarse. It wasn't the fabric she had ordered. "No, no, no," she whispered, panic creeping in. She grabbed the invoice and compared the order number. It was right, but the fabric wasn't. "Elise?" Clara called out, trying to keep her voice steady. Elise strolled in, coffee in hand. "Something wrong?" "The silk's wrong. It's cheap knockoff. If I use this, the whole gown will hang wrong." Elise blinked innocently. "Really? Looks fine to me. I packed the right bolt. I know I did," Clara said, voice tightening. "Well, maybe you're just stressed," Elise replied coolly. "Mistakes happen." Clara stared at her, a quiet storm behind her eyes. She didn't say another word. The fitting was that afternoon. Clara had less than 4 hours to fix this. She called every supplier she knew. Most couldn't help. Then, almost like magic, a courier arrived with a rush order of imported crimson silk, perfectly matched. "Delivery for Clara Lynn," the man said. "Paid in full." Clara signed for it, stunned. "Wait, who?" But the courier just tipped his cap and left. Oliver. She glanced out the window and spotted him across the street, leaning casually against a lamppost, scrolling his phone. When their eyes met, he gave a slight nod, as if to say, "I got you." By some miracle, Clara finished the gown just in time. The client arrived, stepped into the dress, and gasped. "It's stunning," she whispered, turning to see herself in the full-length mirror. Clara exhaled. Relief flooded her chest. Later that evening, after the boutique closed, Oliver stopped by. "I saw your courier," she said, folding fabric slowly at the front desk. Oliver shrugged, trying to play it cool. "Maybe someone wants you to have fewer disasters and more victories." "I didn't ask for help," she said, not unkindly. "I know," he replied, "but I also know what it's like to build something from the ground up. Sometimes it's okay to have a safety net." Clara softened. "Thank you. I want to earn this, not owe it." "You don't owe me a thing," he said sincerely. "I believe in you. That's all." They stood in silence for a moment, warmth hanging in the air like a held breath. But across town, Elise sat in her apartment, scrolling through receipts and supplier logs. Her plan had almost worked, but someone had intervened. She clicked into a background check site and typed, "Oliver Mason, Seattle." The page loaded. What she found made her sit up straighter. Vantage Couture, CEO, private holdings. Press mentions none recent, but enough to piece together a very different picture of the man with kind eyes and quiet generosity. Her lips curled into a cold smile. "Well, Clara," she whispered, "let's see how much you really know about your little hero." The next morning dawned with a soft rain tapping against the shop windows. Clara arrived early, sleeves rolled up, determined to finish 2 rush orders and sketch new concepts she'd been dreaming about. Despite the incident with the silk, her client had left happy, and that counted for something. She set her coffee down beside her sketch pad, the warm scent comforting. She opened her design folio to add a few notes and froze. Empty. Every page gone. Panic shot through her. She flipped through the folio, checked under the table, under her workspace, the floor. Nothing. "Elise!" she called, her voice trembling. Elise emerged from the back, drying her hands on a towel, her expression a picture of forced concern. "What's wrong?" "My designs, they're gone. I left them here yesterday." Elise frowned and walked over. "Maybe you took them home?" "No. I remember clearly closing the folio before I left." Elise looked over her shoulder. "They were beautiful. Shame if they're lost forever." There was something in her tone that sent a chill down Clara's spine. Clara's hands trembled as she picked up her phone. She started to text Oliver, then stopped. She didn't want to seem helpless. But she was anything but helpless. Instead, she returned to her station, pulled out a new sheet of paper, and began redrawing. Every line felt heavier than the last. Anger swirled under the surface, anger at Elise, at herself for not locking the folio away, at this never-ending cycle of sabotage. 2 days later, Clara got the news. Elise's name was featured in an article on a major fashion blog. The piece praised her fresh, innovative sketches, designs that looked eerily familiar. In fact, they were familiar. Clara stared at the screen in disbelief, the sting of betrayal cutting sharper than any blade. Her stomach dropped further when her boss called her into the office. "Clara," he began, shifting uncomfortably in his seat. "There's some buzz going around that Elise has caught the attention of a major retailer." Clara blinked. "A retailer? Based on my work?" "I'm not saying that," he said quickly. "But Elise has presented some very polished sketches, and you've been struggling to keep up with orders lately." Clara's breath hitched. "So, that's it? You believe her?" He leaned forward. "I'm just saying, she's getting attention. Maybe you need to step up your game." Clara left the office without a word. Her chest ached with frustration, disbelief, humiliation. She wanted to scream, but she didn't. Instead, she walked outside, let the chill air bite at her cheeks, and dialed Oliver. He answered on the second ring. "Clara? Did you mean it?" she asked softly. "When you said you believe in me?" He paused. "Of course I meant it. What's going on?" She explained everything, the missing sketches, the article, her boss's warning. Her voice cracked near the end, but she held it together. Oliver listened quietly. "I need to know," she said, her voice raw, "if I'm crazy. Because right now, it feels like the whole world is gaslighting me." "You're not crazy," he said firmly, "and you're not alone." She blinked hard. "Then help me prove it." Oliver didn't hesitate. "I'll handle it." That night, Oliver dug through business contacts, social media accounts, and online records. He found the blog's editor-in-chief, made a few discreet inquiries, and traced Elise's so-called submission. He didn't tell Clara the full extent of what he was doing. Not yet. He just sent her a message. "Hang tight. I'm going to make this right." Across the city, Elise reclined on her couch, scrolling through comments praising her original work. A smug smile curled her lips. But it wouldn't last. And Clara, who had fought so hard to stitch her dreams together, wasn't done yet. The air in Atelier Charm felt heavier now. Clara moved through the shop like a shadow of herself, quiet, focused, but dulled. Her hands still stitched with care, but the spark in her eyes had dimmed. The stolen designs still haunted her. Even as she worked on new sketches, a part of her remained stuck on what Elise had taken not just drawings, but trust. Elise, on the other hand, thrived in her false spotlight. She held her head high, offered smug smiles, and subtly reminded everyone of her feature on the fashion blog. Clara said nothing. There was no proof yet. Across town, Oliver was working quietly behind the scenes. He leaned back in a cafe booth, scanning the contact sheet of the local fashion committee. With a few discreet emails and one carefully placed call, he ensured Clara's name made the final list of designers invited to the upcoming Seattle Forward Fashion Showcase, a prestigious local event where credibility was earned under bright lights and bold prints. He didn't sign the application. Clara had no idea. A week later, Clara sat at her work table when her boss stepped out of his office holding a letter. "Clara," he said, "you've got mail." She looked up, puzzled. No one ever wrote her at the shop. Opening the envelope slowly, her eyes scanned the first line. Then again, she blinked. Fashion showcase? Invitation? Elise's expression twisted as she looked up from across the room. "They must have meant me," she muttered under her breath. Clara clutched the paper to her chest, heart racing. It didn't make sense, but for once, something good had happened without strings. "I didn't even apply," she murmured to herself, eyes scanning the logo again. Her boss smiled faintly. "Well, someone must have thought you deserved it." On the night of the showcase, the venue buzzed with energy-soft music, sparkling lights, and the scent of anticipation. Clara stood backstage, adjusting the hem on her model's gown, her hands trembling ever so slightly. James, one of the older tailors from the shop, approached her quietly. "You nervous?" Clara gave a small laugh. "Is it that obvious?" He smiled warmly. "You belong here. Remember that." Her show began. As the lights dimmed and her designs graced the runway, a hush fell over the crowd. Her pieces, a blend of timeless lines and modern textures, stood out. There was grace in every stitch, and the audience felt it. Oliver sat in the third row, arms folded, hiding his grin. He didn't care about credit. Watching Clara shine was more than enough. After the final model walked, Clara stepped onto the runway for her bow. The applause was real, resounding, and her eyes caught Oliver's for the briefest moment. He gave her the softest nod, almost imperceptible, but she saw it. Backstage, as the models changed, Clara took a breath alone by the dressing curtain. Her phone buzzed. "Oliver, you were incredible tonight." She smiled, then typed back. "I still don't know how I got here, but thank you for always believing in me." He replied, "You got there because you earned it. I just cleared the noise." Later, Elise stormed out of the venue, her heels echoing in the empty parking lot. She had expected the spotlight, but it had landed elsewhere. Back inside, Clara stepped out into the cool air, cheeks flushed from excitement and disbelief. She found Oliver waiting by a bench, coffee in hand. "You came," she said. He shrugged. "Wouldn't miss it for the world." They sat in silence for a moment, the night thick with unspoken gratitude and growing affection. "You ever think about starting your own line?" Oliver asked gently. Clara looked at him, surprised. "All the time, but dreams like that need a miracle." He smiled. "Or maybe just the right people in your corner." She studied him, then really studied him, and for the first time wondered if there was more to this man than he let on. But for now, she let the warmth settle in her chest. For once, things were stitching themselves back together. Seattle's late autumn drizzle blanketed the city in a soft mist, diffusing the glow of street lamps into halos as Oliver stepped out of a quiet cafe near the harbor. His phone buzzed again, another blocked number. He let it ring, and then it buzzed with a message. "Meet me at Atelier Charm tonight, alone. We need to talk. Elise." Oliver stared at it, thumb hovering. He exhaled slowly. The charade had held this long, but Elise had been circling too close to the truth, and when ambition turned to desperation, people like Elise didn't bluff. When he arrived at the shop after hours, the display lights still hummed faintly behind the curtains. Elise stood by Clara's mannequin, arms folded, lips curled into a smirk. "Well, well, the mysterious friend finally shows," she said, turning to face him. "Or should I say Mr. Oliver Blackwood, CEO of Vantage Couture." Oliver didn't flinch. "What do you want, Elise?" She sauntered closer, heels tapping like clock hands counting down. "I want you to stop meddling. Call off whatever little crusade you're on. Clara's had enough fairy dust. It's my turn." "She's earned everything," Oliver said evenly. "You sabotaged her work, stole her designs, and nearly destroyed her reputation. And she's still here. Still better than you." Elise's jaw tightened. "Careful, because if I go down, I won't go quietly." He raised a brow. "Is that a threat?" She stepped even closer, eyes narrowed. "If you keep backing her, if you don't walk away, I'll make sure everyone knows who you really are. Your company, your influence, your little lovesick games. I'll tell Clara you've been pulling strings behind the scenes like some puppet master. How do you think she'll react to that?" Oliver's stomach sank. He'd feared this exact moment the truth twisted and used against him. Clara valued honesty, integrity. If she found out like this, it would feel like betrayal. "You're scared," Elise said, smiling now, "because deep down you know she'd hate you for it." Oliver's voice dropped low. "You're wrong. She might be hurt, yes, but she's stronger than you give her credit for. And she's not stupid." "You sure about that?" Elise said, stepping back toward the door. "Because if I don't see you backing off soon, I'll make sure she hears everything from me." She left him standing there, the air heavy with silence and unspoken consequence. The next day, at Atelier Charm, Clara buzzed with post-show energy. The spotlight had faded, but the praise lingered. Orders had started coming in from boutiques. A small magazine wanted to interview her. Her world, for the first time in years, felt like it might hold space for her dreams. Oliver stopped by in the afternoon, coffee in hand, as always. "You're glowing," he said, offering her the cup. "Don't jinx it," she replied, laughing. "I still feel like this could all vanish overnight." He studied her, how she smiled through uncertainty, how she poured herself into her sketches with silent discipline, how she trusted him. His chest tightened. "Clara," he started carefully, "can I ask you something?" She paused. "Sure." "If someone you cared about had been helping you, quietly, would that feel like betrayal?" She tilted her head. "Helping how?" "I mean, making sure you got chances you deserved, pushing away obstacles, without asking for credit." Clara thought for a moment. "If it came from a good place, and not manipulation, I think I'd feel grateful, maybe even a little upset that they didn't trust me enough to tell me, but not betrayed." Oliver nodded slowly, filing her words away. But across the room, Elise watched and waited, because her next move was already in motion. The buzz of the sewing machines couldn't drown out the tension that hung in the air at Atelier Charm that morning. Clara arrived to find whispers trailing behind her like static. Something was off. Too many glances, too many sudden silences when she entered a room. She tried to focus. Her next commission, a bespoke evening gown, was her chance to rebuild after months of setbacks. She rolled out the pattern and began pinning fabric, her fingers steady but her heart unsettled. Then her manager, Grace, called her into the office. Clara wiped her hands on her apron and entered. Grace looked up from a folder, lips tight, eyes uncertain. "We need to talk," she said, folding her hands. "About these." She slid across a stack of receipts. Clara furrowed her brow and leaned in. "These are supply invoices," Grace continued, "from the past 6 weeks. Apparently, materials were purchased under your login, but the items were never logged into inventory. We're missing over $2,000 worth of textiles." "What?" Clara blinked. "That's not possible. I want to believe you," Grace interrupted gently. "But Elise brought them to me this morning. She says she caught the discrepancies and thought I should know." Clara's stomach dropped. "Elise?" she echoed. "She found the paperwork in the shared folder. Said it looked suspicious." Clara's mind raced. Elise had access to her station, to her account. It would have been easy to plant something, especially if she was targeting her. "I swear to you," Clara said, voice shaking, "I didn't do this. I'd never steal. You know me." Grace hesitated. "I do know your work, Clara, but with everything going on lately, I have to follow protocol. You're suspended until we sort this out." Suspended? The word hit harder than she expected. Clara stood, trying to breathe evenly. "How long will that take?" "Until we complete an internal audit. Probably a week, maybe more." Clara nodded slowly, numb. "Can I at least finish the gown I'm working on?" "I'm sorry. I need your station cleared by the end of the day." By nightfall, Clara sat alone in her small apartment, a half-packed bag of tools at her feet. The silence pressed in. She thought of all the hours she'd poured into that studio. Every thread, every pattern, every sacrifice. All of it, gone in a day. Her phone buzzed. Oliver. She hesitated, then declined the call. She wasn't ready. He'd been kind, yes, constant, but a part of her wondered if she'd relied on him too much. If this, whatever it was just another version of her depending on someone, instead of standing on her own. She needed space, to think, to feel angry, to process. Meanwhile, Oliver sat in his parked car outside her building, the screen still glowing with her name. He'd seen it coming. Elise had warned him, and he hadn't moved fast enough. Now, Clara was taking the fall for something she didn't do. He opened the laptop in his passenger seat and tapped into the files he'd been gathering. Bank records, order logs, a timeline of Elise's activities. It wasn't airtight yet, but it was close. "I won't let her lose everything because of this," he muttered. His phone buzzed again, an alert from a contact at a courier company. A new lead. Fabric deliveries under Clara's name, rerouted to a dummy address Elise had rented last month. "Got you." He sat back, breath quickening. He had proof now, or at least enough to open eyes. Now he just had to decide. Should he expose Elise publicly, or wait till Clara first, explain everything, risk losing her trust before the truth fully cleared her? Either way, time was running out, and Clara was fading from him. The morning mist clung low over Seattle's cobbled streets as Oliver paced across his office at Vantage Couture, his jaw clenched, laptop open with damning evidence. His assistant, Nadia, stood nearby, arms crossed, scanning the latest documents Oliver had traced through a private courier firm. "She used Clara's ID to reroute the fabric," Nadia said, voice tight. "But she didn't cover her trail well. These warehouse logs tie directly back to Elise's rented storage unit." Oliver nodded. "I knew she was sloppy when she got desperate." "And Clara?" Nadia asked gently. "She hasn't returned my calls." He exhaled, the weight of it all pressing down. "I get it. From her view, I'm just another guy who stood by while her life burned." "You can't fix everything from the shadows," Nadia said. "Eventually, you'll have to show your face." He looked out the window. "I'm about to." Meanwhile, Clara sat at her tiny kitchen table, coffee cold, laptop open to a blank design file. She'd opened her freelance tailoring site late the night before, half out of desperation, half out of defiance. With Atelier Charm closed to her, she couldn't wait for redemption. She had to earn it. She posted a few photos of past work, shared the page in a neighborhood group, and waited. By mid-afternoon, her phone pinged. A woman named Julia needed alterations for a gala dress. Then another message, custom embroidery on a wedding veil. Word was spreading fast. It wasn't a comeback, not yet, but it was a beginning. Still, Clara's heart ached. She missed the workroom's buzz, the thrill of new fabric. But most of all, she missed talking to Oliver. She'd almost texted him last night but something still held her back. She wasn't sure what was real anymore. Oliver arrived at Atelier Charm just before closing. Grace, the manager, looked surprised to see him. "Oliver," she greeted cautiously. "I didn't know you were a client here." "I've bought a few pieces over the months," he said, "but today I'm here with something else." He laid out a thin manila folder. Inside were screenshots of Elise's courier requests, falsified login timestamps, and digital correspondence traced back to her home IP address. Grace's eyes widened. This shows Elise set Clara up. Oliver nodded. "There's more. I spoke to the supplier who received the redirected materials. He confirmed Elise signed for them under Clara's name." Grace sat back stunned. Why would Elise go this far? Jealousy, ambition, fear of being outshined. She shook her head. "I should have seen it. I was so focused on procedure. I let Elise manipulate everything." Oliver's voice softened. "You can still fix it." Grace picked up the folder, determination returning to her expression. "I will." That night, Clara's small apartment was lit by a single desk lamp as she hemmed a silk gown for Julia's gala. Her phone buzzed. "Grace." Clara hesitated, then answered. "Clara," Grace said, voice firm but kind. "I owe you an apology. We've reopened the investigation and I want you to come in tomorrow. We have things to make right." Clara blinked, confused. "Wait? What changed?" "Let's just say a friend stepped up." Her breath caught. "Oliver?" Grace didn't answer directly. "Come in tomorrow. We'll talk everything through." As Clara hung up, she looked toward the window where rain tapped softly against the glass. Hope, cautious and trembling, fluttered in her chest. Somewhere, Oliver was still fighting for her, still choosing her even if she didn't fully understand why. And, for the first time in days, Clara allowed herself to smile. The hall buzzed with excitement as Seattle's Autumn Design Gala kicked off inside a historic brick building wrapped in ivy and soft golden lights. Rows of velvet-draped chairs lined the runway. The city's fashion elite filled the space, sipping sparkling wine, mingling beneath banners bearing names of both renowned and rising designers. Clara stood backstage, fidgeting, with the cuff of her deep navy blazer, her heart pounding. She couldn't believe she was here invited last minute by Grace after her freelance work caught the attention of one of the show's sponsors. Grace had reinstated her with a quiet apology and insisted Clara take center stage for the final showcase of the evening. Clara's designs hung on racks behind her, sleek, bold, and unmistakably hers. But the pressure weighed heavy. She still didn't know the full truth behind her suspension. All she knew was someone had cleared her name, and her gut told her that someone was Oliver. She hadn't seen him since the day she walked out. Not once. Not even a text. "Clara?" Grace peeked behind the curtain. "You're up next. They're loving the show. You've got this." Clara nodded stiffly. "Thanks." She walked toward the stage entrance, nerves buzzing, only to hear her name sharper, colder, cut through the air. "Wait!" Elise's voice rang out from the wings. "Before you let her parade around like a saint, the audience deserves to know she's a thief." The crowd silenced. Phones lifted in unison. Elise stepped forward, waving a folder in her hand. "This is proof Clara forged receipts and used shop funds for personal gain. She shouldn't even be in this show." Clara froze, color draining from her face. Grace stood stunned. Security hesitated. Then came a calm but commanding voice from the audience. "That's enough." Heads turned as Oliver walked toward the runway in a tailored gray suit that shimmered under the lights, not flashy, but undeniably elite. His presence turned heads not just because of the interruption, but because many recognized him now. Oliver Graham? Someone whispered. Vantage Couture's CEO? Clara's breath caught in her throat. Oliver climbed the stage, steady and composed. He took the mic from the startled MC and turned to Elise. You want to talk about proof? He said coolly. Let's. He raised a tablet connected to the overhead screen. With a tap, documents appeared Elise's courier signature, emails redirecting shipments, login data. The audience gasped. This, he said, voice measured, is a trail of sabotage. Clara was framed. Elise used Clara's name, faked receipts, and tampered with supply chains. Elise stammered, backing away. You can't just— I can, Oliver said. And I have. Security approached Elise gently but firmly. Her voice faded as she was escorted out. Clara stood frozen, staring at Oliver. He turned to her, softer now. I never meant to lie, he said, addressing her directly. I just wanted to help you without the weight of my title hanging between us. The crowd murmured, captivated. I watched you fight for your dreams. I saw the passion in your stitches, the care in every hem. I believed in you, Clara, but I didn't know how to tell you the truth without losing the part of me you trusted. Clara's eyes filled, hands trembling at her sides. The MC stepped forward awkwardly. Miss Clara, shall we begin your showcase? Clara blinked, slowly nodding. She stepped forward, head high, heart torn. As the lights dimmed and the music swelled, her designs graced the runway met with thunderous applause. But behind the smile she wore for the cameras, Clara's mind spun with everything Oliver had said. He'd saved her. He'd believed in her, but he had also hidden from her. And once the spotlight faded, she knew they'd have to face what lay beneath it all. The applause from the gala still echoed in Clara's ears as she stood alone behind the curtains, her hands resting on the garment rack like it was the only thing keeping her upright. Her heart wasn't racing with triumph, it was heavy with questions. The weight of what Oliver had revealed hadn't sunk in until now. She didn't notice him approaching until his shadow stretched across the floor beside her. Clara, he said gently, his voice stripped of its usual ease. I owe you more than an explanation. She turned to face him. You think? Her voice wasn't raised, but it trembled, not with anger, but with betrayal. You let me believe you were just a kind guy who liked good tailoring and bad coffee, she said, searching his face. And all this time you were what? Testing me? No, never, Oliver replied quickly. I didn't want you to see my name and change how you looked at me. I've had enough people pretending to care because of what I own. With you, it was different. Clara crossed her arms tightly. Different? Oliver, you lied to me. I withheld, he corrected softly, because I didn't want to interfere with your independence. I saw your fire. I didn't want to dim it. But you did interfere, secretly, she said, pain cracking her voice. The influencer, the show invite, even the rushed delivery after Elise's sabotage. You were behind it all, he nodded, shame in his eyes. I thought if I did it quietly, you'd never have to carry the weight of gratitude. I didn't want you to feel beholden to me. Clara looked away, jaw clenched. But I do, and I hate that. A pause settled between them, thick and full of unspoken things. I'm not angry because you're rich, Oliver, she said quietly. I'm angry because I trusted you. You were the one person I thought saw me, not just what I could offer, and now I don't know which part was real. It was all real, he said, stepping closer. Every late-night coffee run, every sketch you let me admire, every smile. That wasn't the CEO of Vantage Couture. That was just me. Oliver. Tears welled in Clara's eyes, but she blinked them back. I need space. I understand, he said, his voice nearly a whisper. But one more thing before I go. She looked up, barely nodding. I didn't do this to be a hero. I did it because I believe in you, and no matter what happens between us, I'll always believe in you." With that, he turned and walked away, leaving Clara alone with the ache of too much kindness and too many lies. The next morning, Clara arrived at Atelier Charm to find Grace waiting with 2 lattes and a sheepish smile. "Guess I owe you more than just an apology," Grace said, handing her the cup. "I'm not sure where to begin," Clara admitted, her voice hoarse from lack of sleep. Grace sighed. "Start with this. I've fired Elise. She's blacklisted from every major house in the city, and the board approved your reinstatement with a public statement clearing your name." Clara blinked. "They actually believed me?" "They believed the receipts, the email trail, and your integrity," Grace replied. "Oliver made sure the truth was undeniable." Clara looked down at her cup. "He always does." "Still mad at him?" Grace asked gently. Clara paused, then nodded slowly. "Yeah, but I'm also grateful and confused." Grace smiled softly. "That sounds about right." Outside, the city moved forward with the rhythm of a new day. Inside, Clara sat at her sewing machine, the fabric beneath her fingers reminding her that her dreams hadn't unraveled, they'd just been restitched with threads she never expected. The soft hum of Clara's sewing machine filled the sunlit space of her apartment-turned-workshop. Bolts of fabric leaned against one wall, half sketches pinned across corkboards like promises waiting to be fulfilled. The silence, once unsettling, now felt purposeful. Clara was starting over, but this time on her own terms. It had been 2 weeks since the gala. 2 weeks since Oliver revealed himself, since Atelier Charm reinstated her, and since Elise's downfall echoed through Seattle's fashion circles like a quiet thunderclap. But Clara hadn't returned to the shop. She had respectfully declined Grace's offer to resume her old position. Something inside her had shifted, some quiet resolve that told her it was time to stop surviving in someone else's shadow and start standing in her own light. The freelance orders rolled in slowly at first. A wedding dress alteration here, a custom blazer there. Then came a message from the Seattle Artisan Guild they were offering a grant for rising independent designers. Clara almost didn't apply. But then she remembered Oliver's words. "No matter what happens between us, I'll always believe in you." So, she did it. She poured her heart into the portfolio, her sketches, her stitching, her story. Not the polished version, but the real one. And just a week later, the call came. She'd won. Clara stared at the acceptance email. Breath caught in her chest. The grant meant materials, a studio upgrade, her own label. It meant freedom. That evening, she found herself outside a familiar building. Vantage Couture's Seattle office stood sleek and modern, but it wasn't the glass or gold accents that made her hands tremble. It was the memory of Oliver's face when she walked away. Before she could change her mind, she stepped inside. The receptionist looked up. "Can I help you?" Clara gave a nervous smile. "I'm here to see Oliver Hart." Oliver's office was quiet, lined with swatches, mood boards, and curated elegance. When he looked up and saw her, surprise flashed across his face, then something softer. "Clara," he said, rising slowly. "I wasn't sure if I'd see you again." She nodded, stepping closer. "I wasn't sure either." For a beat, neither of them spoke. Then Clara exhaled. "I wanted to thank you, not for the money or the favors, but for believing in me when everything else was falling apart." His gaze stayed steady. "You never needed me to lift you, just to clear the debris others kept throwing in your path." She laughed quietly. "That's poetic. I'll give you that." Hint of his smile returned. "So, what now?" "I got the grant," she said, eyes shining. "I'm launching my own line. I already have a space. It's small, but it's mine. I wanted you to know." Oliver's lips parted slightly, like he wasn't sure whether to cheer or cry. "Clara, that's incredible." She hesitated. "I'm still working through everything, but I'd like for you to be part of this. If you're willing to build something honest, with me, no masks, no secrets." His voice dropped to something vulnerable. "Always." Weeks later, Clara stood beneath the soft light of her new boutique, adjusting the neckline on a mannequin. The sign above read, "Clara Hart Design Studio, a quiet tribute not to wealth, but to unity." Across the room, Oliver was helping unpack boxes, his sleeves rolled, his demeanor relaxed. No longer hiding, no longer pretending. "Ready for the launch party?" he called out. Clara grinned. "I've never been more ready." The place smelled of fresh fabric, lavender, and possibility. And as Clara looked around at what she'd built, what they had built, she felt the warmth of something she hadn't known she was missing. Peace. Rain tapped gently against the windows of the boutique as Clara sipped her coffee, watching Seattle's streets glisten with early morning light. The boutique was quiet, just the way she liked it before the day's rush. Dresses hung neatly on wooden hangers, and swatches of fabric were folded with care on her work table. The sign on the door now read, "Clara Hart Design Studio." Her heart fluttered every time she saw it, not because of the name, but because of the journey it symbolized, every sacrifice, every stitch, every moment she thought of giving up. And yet, here she was. The front door jingled, and Oliver stepped in, brushing the rain off his coat. "You're early," she said, arching a brow with a soft smile. "So are you," he countered, grinning. He carried a box wrapped in brown paper, tied with a burgundy ribbon. He set it on the counter. "Something for your launch display." Clara raised a brow, carefully pulling the ribbon and lifting the lid. Inside was a hand-stitched fabric banner cream with gold embroidery. 3 words shimmered across the cloth. "Handmade with heart." She stared. The air caught in her throat. "Did you—" "I stitched the letters myself," he said, a little sheepish. "Took me 3 tries to get that H right." Clara let out a laugh, soft, surprised, touched. "Oliver Hart, CEO and closet embroiderer?" He gave a half bow. "Guilty as charged." They stood there for a moment, the laughter fading into something quieter, more tender. "Can I ask you something?" Clara said, eyes not quite meeting his. "Anything." "Why me?" she asked softly. "You could have helped anyone, invested in any designer with half the risk, but you stayed through everything." Oliver's voice was quiet. "Because from the first moment I saw you stitch that torn cuff on my jacket, I knew you weren't just making clothes. You were telling stories, and no one should ever silence a story like yours." Her eyes glistened, and she quickly looked away, blinking hard. "You believed in me when I barely believed in myself." He stepped closer. "It wasn't charity. It was trust. I wanted to see the world wear your designs." Clara nodded slowly, the words sinking into her chest like warmth after cold. "And I wanted someone to stay without needing the spotlight. Just to be there. Quietly." Oliver reached for her hand. "Then maybe we're finally in the same place." She looked at him, and this time didn't pull away. "I think we are." That evening, under soft hanging lights and delicate music, the boutique came alive for the official launch. Clients mingled with friends, models displayed Clara's first collection, and reporters from 2 local fashion blogs snapped photos of the space. Clara floated through it all, laughing, greeting, answering questions until she spotted Oliver across the room. Not in a suit. Just a simple shirt, sleeves rolled up, holding a tray of hors d'oeuvres like he belonged anywhere and nowhere at once. When their eyes met, he smiled. Not the polished kind he gave at board meetings. The real one, the crooked, vulnerable kind that said, "I see you." She crossed the room, gently taking his hand. "Come with me." She led him to the front of the boutique where a small stage had been set up. Guests quieted as she stepped up, clearing her throat. "I just want to say thank you," Clara began, voice strong despite her nerves. not just to everyone who came, but to one person in particular who saw me before I saw myself, who didn't try to fix me, just stood by until I could stand taller. She looked down at Oliver, emotion flickering behind her eyes. I hope everyone here knows this place didn't start with a loan or a lucky break. It started with kindness, quiet, steady, undeniable. Applause followed, some polite, some moved. And Oliver? He just looked up at her like the moment was stitched into time. The soft hum of morning filtered into the studio through the half-drawn blinds, painting golden slants across bolts of linen, silk, and cotton. Clara stood barefoot on the hardwood floor, surveying her space not just as a boutique owner, but as someone who had reclaimed her story. Sunlight poured over the banner Oliver had stitched, handmade with heart, now proudly displayed above the main table. A subtle reminder of what truly built her empire: integrity, perseverance, and love that didn't need grand declarations. The bell above the front door jingled. "I brought coffee," Oliver called out, holding 2 cups and a brown bag from her favorite bakery. Clara turned, smiling. "Perfect timing. You bribing your way into the kitchen now?" He grinned. "Just trying to secure my place next to your espresso machine." They settled by the window, sipping slowly. Outside, the street was just waking up: dog walkers, cyclists, the distant hiss of a bus stopping. Inside, there was peace. Clara looked over the boutique. "I used to dream about this every night. The space, the line, the customers, but somehow the part that always felt the most impossible was the part where I wasn't doing it alone." Oliver's hand reached across the table, his fingers brushing hers. "You were never alone. You just didn't know I was standing beside you." She nodded gently. "And now I do." He reached into his satchel and pulled out a folder. "There's something I wanted to show you." Inside were mock-up sketches for a new community sewing program. He'd outlined scholarships for underrepresented designers, classes for single mothers, and funding for young creators struggling to access materials or machines. Clara flipped through the pages, awe blooming on her face. This is what we talked about." "You talked," Oliver said with a soft chuckle. "I listened." Her voice trembled. "It's beautiful. It's everything I hoped for but never imagined we could actually build." Oliver met her gaze. "We're going to do it. Together." 1 month later, the studio buzzed with new energy. Teenagers from local schools stitched patchwork pillows. Grandmothers taught apprentices how to align seams. Clara moved through the room like sunlight, guiding, mentoring, laughing. And Oliver? He was often seen carrying bolts of fabric or changing light bulbs, no longer the hidden mogul, but the partner who showed up. During the first workshop's closing ceremony, Clara stood on the modest stage again, this time next to Oliver. She held up a soft, hand-embroidered scarf. "Each of us begins with raw material. In life, sometimes people try to cut us down, tear at the edges, question our shape. But in the right hands, even the most frayed thread can be transformed into something beautiful." The room applauded, but Oliver's gaze was fixed on her quiet pride written all over his face. Later, while folding up chairs, Clara caught his arm. "Come with me." They stepped into the empty boutique, now lit only by a few glowing sconces. Clara pulled something from behind the counter, a sleek gray garment bag. "For you," she said. Inside was a tailored suit, charcoal and sleek, with delicate hand-stitching along the lapel. On the inside pocket, her initials were embroidered next to his. Oliver swallowed. "This is something made with heart," she said, eyes shimmering. He stepped closer. "So, what now?" Clara smiled. "Now we build. Together." He brushed a lock of hair behind her ear. "Clara Hart, designer of dreams and breaker of walls. Will you keep designing with me? Not just suits and gowns, but days and nights, years and lives?" She laughed through a tear. "Yes, always." Outside, the boutique sign gleamed in the evening glow. Clara Hart Design Studio and Workshop. Inside, it wasn't just fashion being crafted anymore. It was legacy, and standing in the middle of it all, hand in hand, were two people who'd stitched a love story so carefully, so intentionally, it would never come undone. Thank you for watching till the end. If this story touched your heart, made you think, or brought a tear to your eye, that's why we tell it. Stay with us for more powerful stories. See you next time.